The banquet hall of the Celestian Spire shimmered with opulence. Chandeliers of floating crystal orbs cast prismatic light over the grand chamber, illuminating 100 alien dignitaries who dined on delicacies from across the Orion Arm. They were the galactic elite, ministers, warlords, and magnates from the ruling circles of half a dozen star empires. On the far end of the hall, a single human stood out like a grain of grit in a jeweled crown. His name was Elias Rourke, a young man brought in chains from Earth's outer colonies. He was not dressed in finery but in simple gray prison garb, wrists bound by an energy manacle that hummed faintly. The elite did not consider him a guest. He was entertainment. High Regent Zalder, a towering insectoid noble whose chitin gleamed with gold lacquer, raised his glass of liquid starlight and sneered down at the human. "So frail, so primitive," he said in his rasping, hissing voice. And yet they resisted annexation longer than most. The surrounding dignitaries laughed, their voices blending into a mocking chorus. Zalder stepped down from his elevated dais, his long limbs clicking against the marble-like floor. He circled Elias slowly, as though inspecting cattle before a feast. "You speak, human?" Zalder asked, cocking his head. Elias clenched his jaw. "When there's something worth saying." The laughter grew louder. Zalder's mandibles spread in amusement, then snapped shut with a sound like steel striking stone. He lashed out suddenly with a sharp limb and slapped Elias across the face. The blow cracked like a gunshot in the hall. Elias staggered, blood welling on his lip, but he did not fall. The elite roared with delight. "Defiant little creature," Zalder said, leaning close. "You exist only because we allow it." From the shadows of the hall, someone stirred. The guards near the entryway shifted uneasily as a figure walked forward, a man in battered armor, his movements precise and deliberate. His broad shoulders carried the unmistakable bearing of a soldier, though not just any soldier. The emblem on his chest, faded yet still proud, was the insignia of the Terran Marine Corps. The laughter faltered. Zalder's mandibles twitched in confusion. "And what is this?" The man's voice was steady, iron beneath velvet. "Gunnery Sergeant Marcus Kane, United Terran Marines. You've made a mistake." One of the alien ministers snorted. "Another human. Slaves multiply like vermin." But Kane wasn't bound. He wasn't cowed. He strode into the light with the composure of someone who had seen too many battlefields to fear a gilded hall. His eyes swept the room, calculating exits, numbers, threats. Zalder hissed in disdain. "You dare intrude." "I didn't intrude," Kane replied evenly. "I was invited. By your arrogance." Before the guards could react, Zalder raised a limb and signaled them back. His ego, bloated by centuries of power, demanded that he show dominance without help. "Then show us, human warrior," he said mockingly. "Show us what your kind can do." He struck at Kane, a blur of chitin and muscle. What happened next silenced the chamber. Kane moved like lightning. His hand snapped up, deflecting Zalder's strike with brutal efficiency. In the same motion, he drove his elbow into the regent's midsection, staggering the towering alien backward. The room gasped as Zalder, High Regent of the Celestian throne, conqueror of 9 worlds, was forced to stumble by a single human. Zalder roared in fury, launching into a flurry of slashing strikes. Kane ducked, pivoted, and countered with surgical precision. A kick shattered one of the regent's legs at the joint. A strike to the thorax cracked the golden chitin. Zalder collapsed to the floor with a screech of rage and disbelief. Had taken less than 10 seconds. Silence hung over the banquet hall like a shroud. Cain stood over the fallen regent, his breathing steady, his fists clenched but ready. "You think humans are weak," he said to the gathered elite. "You've mistaken restraint for submission. You've mistaken our patience for fear. That's your last mistake." The middle, a storm in the hall. The guards finally surged forward, their weapons raised. But Cain was already moving. He seized a fallen glaive from one of the armored sentinels and spun it with lethal grace. The first guard fell in 2 precise strikes. The second was disarmed and slammed into the banquet table, sending platters of alien delicacies crashing to the floor. The elite shrieked in horror, scrambling from their seats. Some shouted for security drones, others for evacuation. Zaldar, wheezing and broken, tried to crawl toward the dais, but Cain planted a boot on his thorax, pinning him. Elias, still bound, stared in awe. Who are you really?" Cain didn't look back. "A Marine. And you're coming with me." He smashed the control node of Elias's manacle with the glaive, freeing him. The young man flexed his wrists, the circulation returning with a sting. For the first time since his capture, he allowed himself a flicker of hope. The chamber erupted as more guards poured in, heavily armored, bristling with plasma rifles. Cain tossed the glaive to Elias. "Stay behind me, and if anyone gets too close, swing." The firefight ignited in a storm of plasma and steel. Cain moved like a predator unleashed, his training turning the chaos into a dance of survival. Every step was calculated, every strike decisive. He closed the distance before the guards could pin him down with ranged fire, dismantling them in close quarters. Elias, though untrained, held his ground, swinging wildly but managing to keep enemies at bay. Through the smoke and flashing light, Cain guided them toward the exit. The elite had fled in panic, their arrogance dissolving into fear. The mighty High Regent lay crippled and humiliated, a living symbol of how quickly power could crumble. "Why risk this?" Elias shouted over the din. "Why come here for me?" Cain's eyes were steel. "Because every human matters. They need to know that." The ending, the fall of an empire. They burst into the Stardock, alarms blaring across the spire. Cain had anticipated the layout, having studied stolen schematics before launching his infiltration. A small interceptor craft waited, stolen from the elite themselves. But their escape was not uncontested. A towering war beast, cybernetically enhanced and clad in ceremonial armor, blocked the hangar gate. It was Zaldar's champion, a creature bred for nothing but slaughter. Its eyes glowed red, and it hefted a blade longer than Cain was tall. Elias froze in terror. "We can't fight that." Cain stepped forward calmly, his expression unreadable. "You don't fight monsters with fear. You fight them with precision." The beast charged. The impact shook the hangar as its blade cleaved down. Cain rolled aside, drawing a plasma sidearm from his belt. He fired, scoring the beast's armor but not slowing it. It roared and swung again, sparks showering as its blade carved through the deck plating. Cain exploited every opening, striking joints, targeting exposed cybernetics, forcing the beast to expend energy with every missed attack. At last, he baited it into overcommitting, sidestepped the massive blow, and drove his plasma pistol into the beast's open maw. One pull of the trigger ended the fight in a burst of searing light. The beast toppled, shaking the hangar as it crashed to the ground. Elias stared in disbelief. How did you do that?" Cain holstered his weapon, his voice low. "Training. Discipline. And because someone had to."